Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Zach Meckler.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and today, as promised last week, but day late, dollar short, who really cares? Standing in for Brian Roach today, who we call at least, the professor of football, one Zach Meckler. Zach, we were trying to figure out if we should call you professor or if you're already a professor, you're Dr. Meckler. How's it going, bud?
Another day, another dollar in the field of wonderful world of football.
Now, we're going to try and understand the professor, even though he speaks above us usually. He's got a little bit of a cold going right now. Isn't that right?
Yeah, nothing more timely than a cold in the middle of October, let me tell you that much.
It's crazy, man. I was in shorts and short sleeves a day ago, and then it's like back to throwing on a coat and wearing some jeans. I can't figure it out. And there were a lot of people who hit up the Steelers game at Heinz Field with the Atlanta Falcons last Sunday. They were saying how deceptively hot it was. I mean, it was like a real feel of, I think, 91 out there, and I think the actual temp was like 84 or 85. I don't know what it is, the gold seats or something. It's like you end up with a sunburn, your lips get burnt if you're sitting in the sun the whole time, and then if you're wearing the jersey and you got something, even the jersey itself, like as a fan just walking into the stadium, you end up sweating. Makes you wonder about some of these guys wearing pads and stuff, but good rotation stuff. The Steelers, they handled business against the Atlanta Falcons big time, bigly. I like saying that word. I know some people don't like the gentleman who does say it, but I keep politics out of this. I do like the word bigly. It's fun to say. But the Steelers handled their business last week. They left some points on the table too, and they won 41-17 against an Atlanta Falcons team that, when we were making comparisons last week, and we were even kind of hinting at it heading into this week, a week in advance, myself and Brian, Falcons and the Bengals and the Steelers all have a lot of similarities. Seems like they have offenses capable of gaining yards, putting up points, but also defenses that are capable of giving up yards and also giving up points.
Yeah, I think the Falcons were kind of a team that a lot of people thought that were going to be in the contention again, year two under Steve Sarkisian on offense and kind of getting the opportunity to go and see what they can do. And they haven't disappointed offensively. They took a step back last week, and the Bengals were struggling on offense before Bill Lazor took over as OC last year, and they've kind of started to have an uptick in production, and the Steelers are a roller coaster of emotions and on-field performance, and having the opportunity to see them kind of put together a full game last week was nice. So you have three teams that have really been able to get it done on offense, but have struggled at times, whether it's due to injury or due to coverage mistakes, communication errors, that have all kind of struggled at times on defense. So I think there are three very comparable teams in that sense.
Yeah, and we're going to really dig into that. Cincinnati Bengals atop the AFC North, 4-1 record. We were just talking off the air, trying to compare our notes, and it's like, I'm not really sure that their record indicates that they're a 4-1 team, but lo and behold, they have the wins and losses. That's what it really comes down to. Wins over the Colts, the Ravens, the Falcons, just the same with the Steelers. They actually came back in that game in the final minute or so and ended up winning by a point, 37-36, in what was a shootout. And then they also came back last weekend against the Miami Dolphins to win 27-17. I believe there was a pick six as part of that comeback bid. They are back at home, back-to-back. They welcome the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have, quite frankly, owned the Cincinnati Bengals. That is the last four games at Paul Brown Stadium, the home of the Bengals. The Steelers have come out victorious. They have won 6 straight, going back all the way to November 1st, 2015 is the last time the Cincinnati Bengals have beaten the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if you go back even a little further, over their last 10, the Steelers winners of the last 9. Now, that might suggest that the Steelers shouldn't have a problem on Sunday, but one of the things I wanted to point out, the very first one, a lot of people, we already mentioned offense, we already mentioned defense. Let's just jump straight to special teams and my man Chris Boswell, because I put this up on the website for anyone who visited and gets to see the article. You'll get to see all of the numbers, but in his last 4 games at Cincinnati, so this is on the road, Chris Boswell has kicked 4, 6, and 3 field goals. That's a total of 17 field goals, which also means 51 points. 51 points off the foot of Chris Boswell, and quite a few of those kicks. 49 yards, three of those. 49, 49, 49, 47, 45, 45, 42, and 40. Guess where Chris has missed 3 times from this season so far? Between 40 and 49. Now, if you go and you want to add a few more field goals to this equation, 6 more right on top of that, that takes you to 23 total field goals over those 6 victories. This is the game where the Wizard of Oz has earned his nickname as a Killer Bee, and I almost feel like it could. We're going to talk about some other circumstances here, but if it were to come down to, he's got to be on his A game Sunday.
Yeah, I know Zach Saldana has his Z factor every single week, but as the other, in-house Zach, he's my Z factor of the week, just due to the fact that he has made such an impact in recent games against the Bengals. And, we saw last year how he was the deciding factor in so many of his contests over the last half of the season. I think realistically, this has a potential to be another high-scoring affair in Cincy, but at the same time, it could be one of those slugfests that we've become so accustomed to seeing between the two teams, and it could come down to a Chris Boswell field goal in that range to win it. It wouldn't be surprising if it came down to that, but you're going to have a big game by that. He's left, I forget, it's like 11 or so points on the board consistently over the course of the season, and that's not going to fly in an AFC matchup like this against the Bengals. You're going to need to have him convert those kicks regardless of the weather and make that, kind of get back on track. I do think that his leash is relatively longer than you would expect from a guy that's been struggling like he is, just due to the money they have invested in now at this point. But realistically, I think at some point he turns it around. I almost feel as though he has the yips almost. We see so much with pitchers. And I think once he gets into that groove and gets the consistency down, you're going to start seeing the Chris Boswell we're used to. And hopefully that starts this weekend.
Yeah, I agree with you. And with that out of the way, it's got some people probably biting off all of their fingernails because, some of these games that give you some anxiety. The Steelers aren't ones to necessarily just come right out the gate and put these games away. Most of them have been pretty close. I mean, when you go back to the games they've been ugly too. We'll put it that way. The very first one out of this 4-game streak down at Paul Brown, the Steelers were 7-5 and the Bengals were 10-2. So you're kind of in the same kind of situation where the Steelers were kind of floundering and the Bengals were soaring. And this was like, the Steelers didn't have Le'Veon Bell. This was a game with D'Angelo Williams. It was another one of these things where Chris Boswell hits a few field goals. You had William Gay with a pick 6. You go back to the wild card playoff game. We remember how crazy that was with the game winner once again from Boswell. You had Burfict hurting Ben Roethlisberger, sending him off the field, knocking out Antonio Brown. Once again, that was just shortly after that other win at Paul Brown. That was within the same season. Then you had the game where Jeremy Hill goes off the field and they were kind of just kicking our butts. And he takes the terrible towel and was trying to rip it. And no one ever told him about the curse of Myron Cope. And they ended up laying an egg 24-20. If you remember, that was the one where Ben found Eli Rogers just in the middle of nowhere. And it was like another one of those games where you're just like pulling out all of your hair. And then the final one, of course, last year was the one where Ryan Shazier got hurt. And, it may be the last game of his career for all we know. That's certainly the one that's on a lot of people's minds because this is the first time they've returned or they're returning to this venue. And, you're just kind of wondering again what's going to happen. I mean, the Steelers were down 17-3 and then 20-10, and then they scored 13 unanswered points and came back to win that one. So they don't always have these just smooth, beat up on the Bengals type things, even though the result is a W on the scoreboard. So kind of interested in seeing because, they shot right out of the cannon last week with the Atlanta Falcons. We're going to talk here and compare some of the statistics. In fact, I'm trying to pull it up right now, and I have it somewhere here because I have like a bazillion different things open besides my predictions, which we'll get to in a second. I have some interesting ones here for you, Zach, but we were talking comparison-wise, with the Steelers' offense scoring points and the defense giving up points in Atlanta and that doing about the same, and we were saying how close they were just even last week. Let's take a look at this week. You've got, one thing that isn't close is coach versus opponent. Mike Tomlin all-time 17-5 against the Bengals, where Marvin Lewis is 8-22 against the Steelers. That's just crazy. You know what? I got to interrupt this for 1 second, even my own, getting long-winded here, but I was out Halloween shopping for some costumes. Had a gentleman saw my Steelers hoodie, starts talking, says, hey, it looks like they're turning it around. And we started talking, and immediately I said, hey, I think they're going to whip on the Bengals this week. I mean, that's just the way I feel about it. Sorry, if you're from Cincinnati and listening to this and you're a Bengals fan, why are you listening to a Steelers show? It's going to upset you. So I don't care. But he said, how does Marvin Lewis still have a job? He has to have something on the owners. Maybe he caught someone, doing something in one of the offices or something like that. And I'm like, well, it makes sense because we all thought the big announcement, or what was that, earlier this year, like in January, we thought the big announcement was going to be, Marvin Lewis is going to retire or walk away from all this. And it was a 2-year extension. And then they were talking about how he's the winningest coach in Bengals history, and he's never even won a playoff game. He's been there since Shep was a pup, since the modern Super Bowl era, right? The 70s or something. I don't know. He's been there forever and hasn't done anything. But 8-22, that's insane. And it gives you reason to talk smack. It allows us to talk smack. But Steelers, points 4, they are 5th in points scored. They average 28.6, where the Bengals average 30.6, and they are 4th in scoring in the league. So 4th to the Steelers, 5th. Defensively, the Steelers give up 26.6, and the Bengals give up 26.0. So for points allowed, the Steelers are 25th, and the Bengals are 21st. And how close is that? The Steelers have given up a total of 133 points, and the Bengals have given up 3 less and jumped 4 spots up the chart. So only a field goal separates these two teams defensively as far as points given up or given away. The way I look at this, man, this could be a scoring fest. We could be looking at another shootout, or it could be somewhat half one-sided depending on how the defenses play.
Yeah, I mean, I've been going back and forth trying to figure out how I want to look at this because, the Steelers and Bengals always have memorable moments, whether it's, Juju laying out Vontaze Burfict, whether it's that complete meltdown in the playoffs, whether it's the Shazier injury. There's always something that kind of stands out. And those moments typically have the ability to sway the game one way or the other. In my mind, I think the Steelers showed what they are capable of as a team last week. The Falcons defense was really nothing to scare anybody, really. Alabama could have gone out there and done the same thing realistically. But on defense, you really kind of saw that change up. What we haven't seen so far is their ability to shut down teams. And, they were a healthy offense, the Falcons. So seeing them go out there and really shut down Julio Jones, shut down Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu minus that one long grab, and Matt Ryan really didn't have anywhere to throw. They had nowhere to run. That's the type of game we need to see from the Bengals if they're able, or from the Steelers against the Bengals. If they're able to do that realistically, I see no reason why this can't be a low-scoring affair. And to that end, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a high-scoring game because, these games are never predictable with Cincy and Pittsburgh. When we say one thing, it ends up, we could say it's going to be a 40-30 game. It turns out being like 13-10 or something like that. So but I think it will be on the little bit kind of on the higher score. I think upper 20s to low 30s realistically. I know I threw the score out to you. Like 30-17 or something along those lines. I wouldn't be surprised to see a score somewhere in that region when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I was looking at this on MyBookie, one of our former partner sponsors, and I'm always looking at their lines. They have the Steelers as plus 2.5. You want to guess what the over-under is for this game?
I would probably say about 50-52.
Ooh, very close. They have it at 53 even. So they're predicting that they're calling your bluff as to whether or not these teams are going to put up 30 apiece on each other or in the whereabouts of that. So I was kind of surprised on that too. And I love what you just said, because you were talking about a healthy Falcons. You're talking about Matt Ryan. I look at the Falcons. Now, of course, the Steelers got to go on the road, and they were not a bad road team last year whatsoever. This is AFC North football, and like we just said, Paul Brown Stadium has kind of been a home away from home for them, the same way First Energy is. Now, we don't talk about M&T Bank Stadium because the Ravens kind of own the Steelers number in much the same way the Steelers have owned the Bengals for a while. Here's my thing here. I start looking at, and I make comparisons. It may not be fair to do this because I already talked about how it's not fair, but I'm going to do it anyways. Matt Ryan or Andy Dalton? Who's the better quarterback of those two? I don't know. They're almost like a push, but I'm going to take the guy who's won a league MVP and had his team in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at overall talent, Matt Ryan is the better quarterback.
Julio Jones or A.J. Green? Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a push for me.
when they're at their best, I say Julio Jones. But when you look at consistency and who has done more with less, I say A.J. Green, realistically.
Fair enough. Could I put Tyler Boyd up against Calvin Ridley?
I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, I before this year, Boyd hasn't done much of anything, and I'm partial having played against him in high school. But realistically, I think until Ridley shows some level of consistency, because that production he had was not going to be consistent, and he had to come crashing back down to earth at some point. I'm just glad it was against Pittsburgh. I would put Boyd at this point in time just due to the fact that he has been there, done that. We've at least seen flashes of greatness from him more consistently.
Yeah, I've also saw him drop the ball and et cetera, playing against the Steelers too. So, I mean, that's really tough. And Ridley didn't do a whole lot last week either. Mohamed Sanu against, I don't know, throw somebody out there. John Ross. I mean, Sanu was better with the Bengals, and he's obviously better with the Falcons than anybody else that think the Bengals have on the roster right now.
Yeah, no, it's new.
Yeah, asterisks there, of course. I mean, we already mentioned A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd. I mean, that's where I was going with that. And then there's Joe Mixon, and I guess Devonta Freeman banged up a little bit, Tevin Coleman, and you're looking at that as a 1-2 punch, but it looks like the Bengals may be without Gio Bernard, or I think he's already pretty much ruled out for this game. They're going to be just with Joe Mixon, no Gio Bernard, so no 1-2 punch there. I don't know how to take that. I mean, Mixon can be kind of a dynamic player, much in the same way we see James Conner. I'm curious because I think Atlanta Falcons have a better offensive line as well. So that's where I stand.
I liked the Bengals picking up Mixon last year because I thought he kind of was able to. He blended both what Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill brought to the table last year, and I thought that was kind of a do it all back. He is proficient as a runner, he's proficient as a receiver, and I thought that was kind of a good move for them. When you look at what you have with Freeman, who this last time I checked was doubtful for this upcoming weekend, compared to Tevin, so I'll look at Tevin Coleman almost as comparison. I would take Mixon, and just for the fact that he is that do it all type of running back, and I also have him in fantasy, so I'm biased at this point in time. But I think realistically, he is the better back when it comes to just, this for the sake of right now. But I think Freeman is like the more household name. He's the potent runner. He's downhill. He's between the tackles. He can receive. So that's a tough one, personally.
Yeah, basically I'm just trying to paint a picture of, what the Steelers defense, what you can expect if they bring their A game like they did last weekend. You might be able to expect a lot of the same stuff, especially you got Billy Price, who was the first-round draft pick, the center out of Ohio State, who he didn't practice Wednesday. I was trying to dig up information here on the old Twitter, and I couldn't find what he did for Thursday, but, he may be out again. And they have a guy that was, basically a street free agent type, and Trey Hopkins might be filling in for him. They went out and they got Cordy Glenn in the offseason as a left tackle. They got Clint Bowling, who's been there for a while as their left guard. And then you got, just much like the Steelers do, except on the opposite side of the line, some other guys that, came by way of being a undrafted type player out of college or a street free agent. You got Alex Redmond and Bobby Hart looking to start in those spots. And I see that as a potential, maybe, I don't know if I necessarily want to call it a weakness, but you take a look and see what the Bengals have been doing. They have been rushing offense-wise. They are 23rd, and believe it or not, the Steelers are only 27th overall, averaging 84 yards per game to the Bengals 95. So they've been able to run the ball, but the Steelers kind of abandoned the run a few times there. The Bengals, however, are giving up 118 per game on the ground. It's 23rd overall in the league. To the Steelers giving up 105, which is 15th. So you're looking at it purely statistically. You would think this is kind of a favorable matchup when you start to get some of the Steelers front seven and that involved. And we're going to be talking about who's shadowing who and stuff. Well, let's just go right into it. We heard, what was it? We were just reading something from Jeremy Fowler via ESPN. He was talking with Keith Butler about whether or not Joe Hayden's going to shadow someone. This was one of my bold predictions, actually, and I'm going to give you both of them here because I got one for each receiver on each side of the ball. I could see AJ Green being kind of shut down to a certain degree. He could be the Steelers' killer, but I think both teams are going to try and take out the primary weapon, the star on each side of the ball. For us, that's Antonio Brown, and I could already see the headlines. People are going to be talking about how the lawsuit's in his head. Maybe the Wi-Fi connection is just good or adequate or whatever the funky words are that they use whenever it doesn't work in my home. AJ Green, I think, under 5 catches, and I said nowhere near 100 yards. That's with the caveat of Joe Hayden following him around. I think Joe Hayden can hold him to that much. Everyone else, it's going to be a little bit interesting, but you did say something. I'm going to give you the credit for it and run with the ball here, is when Joe Hayden is shadowing the best receiver from the opposition, that kind of enables some of the other guys in the secondary to maybe play up a level with their talent and abilities.
Yeah, so the way I see it, Joe Hayden, when he went against Julio on a consistent basis, following him around the field. Julio was pretty much a non-factor last week. I know last season, whenever he was matched up with DeAndre Hopkins against the Texans, DeAndre Hopkins was a non-factor until the very end of the game when the Texans are down by 25, 30 points or whatever it was. I think realistically, if you give Joe Hayden, who is the best corner on the roster, the opportunity to shadow A.J. Green, follow him around the field, whether it's in man coverage, whether it's off zone, you give the opportunity to put Artie Burns and Cody Sensabaugh in an opportunity to be successful, which not saying they're bad corners. I know they've taken a lot of slack this year, specifically Artie Burns, due to the fact that, everyone wants him to be the number one cornerback and go toe-to-toe with those guys. And if he's not at that point right now, why put him in a position to not be successful? He can be successful against guys that aren't the number one all-pro wide receiver that these teams have, in this case, A.J. Green. I think it's a much more even matchup seeing him follow a guy around like Tyler Boyd or even John Ross due to John Ross's deep speed if he ends up playing this weekend. So realistically, that's a good matchup for Artie to not have to worry about going against an all-world talent and just work on his skill. He's athletic. He does have good ball tracking skills. He's better as a tackler than he has been in the past. I think that's an opportunity for him to really kind of go and shine against the number 2 or number 3 receiver. Same thing with guys like Mike Hilton and Cody Sensabaugh. They're guys that are going to be in the middle or on the outside like Sensabaugh often is. And Sensabaugh has flown under the radar this year. A lot of fans give him a hard time as well, but statistically speaking, he has been one of the Steelers' better defensive backs this year and one of the better defensive backs in the league, which is mind-blowing due to the stats when you look at what he's been targeting, what he's been allowing, which is very minimal. And quarterbacks almost seem to be avoiding him and targeting other guys. So that makes for a good matchup to see him against a lesser receiver to continue that trend and have Joe Hayden follow a top guy around to really kind of showcase what they're good at, which for Artie, that's his deep speed ability, his recovery ability, and his ability to go down the field toe-to-toe with a deep threat like a number 2 or a number 3 guy, whereas Joe Hayden is just the best all-around cornerback and has the ability to go against those top all-pro guys as a former Pro Bowler himself. So I think that's where they're going to hopefully have the success. And I'm hoping that Keith Butler does stick to his guns because we've seen success with that with not only just the Steelers, but teams in general. It's a much better matchup when your number 1's going against the number 1 compared to your number 3 going against the number 1. So I'd much rather see that happen.
Although one may remember Ross Cockrell about 2 years ago. What he held AJ Green to like 2 catches, which was pretty phenomenal in and of itself. That was something. Yeah, I'm actually putting down that I don't actually expect Antonio Brown to score in this game as part of my predictions because I just think the Steelers are going to spread the ball around a little bit more. But speaking AB and speaking of Joe Hayden, this comes from Mark Caballi of The Athletic. He has a quote from Antonio Brown. He says, Antonio Brown told me about Joe Hayden, quote, "He's the number 1 GOAT. I mean, if you're the GOAT, you're the greatest of all time, right? So this is the number one GOAT. That's a little better. He's the number one GOAT. He's so good, we're going to put him on the ant farm. Yeah, okay, Ronald Ocean. I mean, Eamon Kabali says, sounds cool, not a clue what ant farm means. And I don't know, do goats eat ants? I'm not quite sure. Does it mean he can cover everybody? I'm not sure what to take of that. But Antonio Brown, high praise there for Joe Hayden. And when you look at around the Cincinnati offense, I think Vince Williams appears to be back in full strength and ready to play. Larry, LJ Fort, though, not practicing the first 2 days. We don't know what's going to happen. Friday's practice, of course, we're ahead of that so far. So you have to keep your eyes on that. He was kind of the superstar of a week ago, but Dirty Red, Tyler Matakevich, silently getting some things done. So the Steelers, I think just cohesively as a unit, as a defense, I think it's starting to click. I think they're starting to figure it out. You'll still have Terrell Edmonds and Sean Davis and all of those guys, and since they were able to TJ Watt having this little friendly competition with his brother JJ, they're able to get some pressure there on the opposition, leading the league in sacks again. I mean, we're talking about maybe Billy Price not being in there. We're talking about, some things with the offensive line with the Bengals. I think the Steelers can still get it done. If they put pressure on Dalton, we know, Matt Ryan, folded like a chair. It's just Andy Dalton is the kind of guy that throws the ball away on fourth down when you need to convert. So I would not be surprised to see a carryover from the previous week. Hopefully, I'm not sure. Who do you think maybe stands out on this defense? I mean, there was enough of a rotation. You talked about Cody and Artie. Cody's actually been playing maybe more snaps in one case 2 weeks ago. A third more of the game than Artie Burns, and allowing far less of anything, targets or receptions, his direction as quarterbacks look the other way. So when we look at the front seven, we look at the linebackers, the defensive line, they've had a nice rotation in there. I think it's been keeping guys healthy like Cam Hayward. Even with TJ Watt and Bud Dupree, they've been bringing Anthony Chickalo in at times. I look to see kind of that same thing instead of just letting those guys stand on the field, wither away, and get tired like they did against the Ravens, really. I think that's going to be their game plan here.
Yeah, I think that speaks volumes to kind of the depth that they have that a lot of people are very harsh on. They might not have, as of right now, at least as we're doing this podcast, they don't have that guy that really stands out as like the Ryan Shazier impact player, like Troy Polamalu, or whomever you want to put in that position. So I think it's imperative for them to find guys in certain situations and put these guys in the places to be successful. I'm perfectly fine with having a rotation at inside linebacker if that means that we're going to see success from Tyler Matakevich and LJ Fort and John Bostic, because we're putting them in the positions to be successful. John Bostic's kind of been the more steady linebacker in that group so far this season, which, 2 months ago, fans would have been never believing because of how rough he was looking in some of the preseason action. But then having LJ Fort in those kind of dime packages, nickel packages, to have him on the field roving in coverage and playing underneath, and then having a guy like Dirty Red in there whenever it comes to very clear running situations, that's just being smart as a play caller for your defense and putting guys in a position to be successful. Not having Vince Williams out there, unhealthy, but having him out there in coverage against, an underneath speedster like John Ross, that's not going to ever work for you, no matter how good or average Vince Williams is. I like Vince Williams. I'm not going to say he's average, but that's not his strength. His strength's not covering deep threats like that. So I think that's just comes down to putting guys in the position to be successful. I love the fact that whatever Carl Dunbar has done this year has brought out this new version of Daniel McCullers we haven't seen over the past 4 years. He's out there. He's making impact plays in the limited snaps he has, even though he's not showing up on the box score. He's out there still disrupting plays, getting his hands up and throwing lanes, causing the defense to force an incompletion on a pivotal third down, or stuffing the lane and allowing the linebackers to come up and fill a run lane to make the tackle in the backfield for a loss. Small things like that don't show up on a box score what make defenses great and make players great. And, I think that's really where the Steelers are starting to kind of improve, I think. We kind of saw that last week against the Falcons. If they can continue on that trajectory, this is a defense that has talent. I know I put a tweet out there probably about a month and a half ago now at this point. It was beginning of the season. People don't want to admit, but the Steelers do have talent at every level of the defense. I'm not saying they're elite. I'm not saying every player that's on that defense is great. because they're not. They're starters that aren't great. There's areas that need to be improved in the future next season. But when you look at the defensive line, when Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt are on, they're one of the better, tandems in the league that we can see at this point for what they bring to the table. They haven't been that way because Stephon Tuitt continues to be one of the most inconsistent players on the roster, and Cam Hayward hasn't really had that breakout. Last week was kind of the first glimpse of it. But they still, when they're on, they're on. And that's pretty much imperative to any player. When you're on, you're on. When you're off, you're off. But a linebacker, T.J. Watt, inconsistent so far this season, but when he's been on, as he was last week and as he was week 1 against the Browns, he looks like one of the premier up-and-coming pass rushers in the league. Coming from a position you traditionally don't see guys getting that many sacks from, at the left outside linebacker position. That's a very impressive feat for him, and it's a good opportunity for him to exploit this week against guys that really aren't elite talent right tackles. They're not Marcus Gilberts. They're not I'm trying to blank on other right tackles right now in the league because I'm not thinking at the moment, but you get my point. They're not top. Rob, whatever his name is, I don't even know much about him for the Bengals. He's not an elite talent. That is a good opportunity for T.J. Watt to kind of exploit, get around the outside, and continue to put up those numbers. Because if he does do it at a consistent level, he's on pace for a record-breaking opportunity this year for the Steelers, and potentially getting more attention in the league. And I'd love to see that happen for him. And then in the secondary, putting positions like Terrell Edmonds, we've seen him kind of start to develop a little bit. His best game of the season by far was last week, and it wasn't even close. And that's the type of talent they saw to take him in the first round when so many people had him written off as a third or fourth round pick. So that they can put that all together on a consistent basis. This is a defense that is formidable enough to go and at least keep games in control for the Steelers, because the Steelers offense has the ability to put up points, but I don't trust them at this point to be in shootouts. So all the Steelers defense has to do is be good or average. And this is a winning football team that can make a splash in the playoffs. And I think what we saw last week really kind of starts dictating that direction, that this is a team that could be reckoned with when they're on, which is any team really, but the Steelers have the talent.
Yeah, I know. I totally resonate with what you're saying. I forgot to mention, too, that Clint Bowling was banged up earlier in the week and he returned to practice. Yeah. So, you got the left guard also and try to give these guys a little bit of love and say, if Billy Price is in there from the center through the left side of the line, they should be pretty formidable. Tyler Kroft also banged up too, and he was another guy who had, I believe, he returned to practice as well. But I mean, they've got some injuries that they're dealing with, some nicks and whatnot, scars from war or whatever Mike Tomlin ends up calling it. I'm going to flip sides of the football here in a second. You had me thinking, and I'm trying. Oh, I was going to say about getting to Andy Dalton rotation wise and things of that nature, and also Vince Williams. We were talking about this off the air as well, and earlier in the day, it was he's kind of like a younger Lawrence Timmons, and Lawrence Timmons, I think he was an every down 3-down player kind of out of necessity, whereas that's where Vince Williams is now, because that wasn't Vince Williams' bag last year when Ryan Shazier was healthy. He was kind of slid into that because Ryan Shazier went down, and we all see how the defense kind of fell apart. I want to say at moments, but it was pretty much every game from that point forward, unfortunately. But Andy Dalton, my last thought on Andy Dalton, 12 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, even though they got the new offensive coordinator. We didn't even say a whole lot about Bill Lazor, did we? I mean, we were making fun of Marvin Lewis, but he has 2 new coordinators. He has a new offensive coordinator and Bill Lazor, and they looked like they, very, what do you want to say? They execute. And it could be electric at times, too, and hit people down the field. I saw John Ross with that. That's actually how he got hurt. I think the current injury he's nursing with his groin was on a long bomb completed for a touchdown. But Dalton's completing a ridiculous amount of passes right now, 65.8%. I don't know. I mean, if this is the Steelers' defense, and mind you, a couple names here, Tyson Alualu, they weren't able to do this. Like, Tyson Alualu was hurt at the beginning of the year. Getting him back out there is big as part of this rotation too. So guys stay fresh and they can help with the pass rush. I just don't know that 65.8% is sustainable, even if the Steelers play at their worst with Andy Dalton. It just seems a little crazy to me, especially when guys like Gio Bernard Bernard, who's usually like that, that passing kind of the guy he looks for in the passing game, out in the flat, the little outlet passes, stuff like that, if he releases off of a block. And then Tyler Eifert, of course, with that gruesome injury. I think Dalton's capable of throwing at least a pick. I think the Steelers will get to him a handful of times. Unfortunately, I also think the Bengals are going to get to Big Ben a few times. Big Ben did not go down last week against the Atlanta Falcons. He had all the time in the world, and while the Steelers' offensive line, I think, is infinitely more times better than what Cincinnati Bengals have, you got to worry about the other guy who is tied for the league lead in sacks with those two Watt brothers, and he's going to be on the other side of the ball wearing those prison stripes or whatever you want to call them with the orange and black outfits. Carlos Dunlap, and they've got a few other guys. Wait, is it Carlos Dunlap, or did I screw that up? Let me pull that back up in a second here. Yeah, and I had it, and I screwed it up because I almost wanted to say, but they got guys like Geno Atkins. They got a young buck in Sam Hubbard, who was just drafted from Ohio State. You got Carl Lawson. It was Geno Atkins, not Carlos Dunlap, but Carlos Dunlap, they got a number of guys, and also right below Geno Atkins here in the lead with 2 picks on the team, a guy that we talked about a lot during draft season, Jesse Bates, that we wanted ourselves for the Steelers, one of the new safeties that's there, and then they let go. Who did they let go? He went to the Vikings. I can't remember. I keep thinking Reggie Nelson. It wasn't Reggie Nelson. It was George Iloka, right? He was there like forever, but they still have William Jackson III. He's a little bit banged up. And then there's Dre Kirkpatrick, who I wonder if James Conner is going to get his poster moment by stiff-arming him at some point on Sunday, because James Conner leads the league in broken tackles. And you've got what? The only other guy who has numbers like Conner so far, rushing, receiving, and scoring, is what? Todd Gurley. And we're all worried that Conner wasn't getting enough touches. He gets enough touches. You see what he can do. If you told everybody they had Todd Gurley in the backfield, they would be like, who? Le'Veon Bell, who? They wouldn't care. So I'm not so worried about Le'Veon Bell not being in this game or anything like that. You still have Antonio Brown, even though I think they're going to try and limit him, but you can't limit Juju Smith-Schuster as well. And then you've got both tight ends. As Ben said, it's fantastic to have both Vance McDonald and Jesse James because they get some rest. He even mentioned Xavier Grimble as part of that, and Xavier gets a few snaps here and there. That's an awful lot before you even get into Ryan Switzer or James Washington. I think the Steelers are very well equipped. I think they would have been too against the Ravens if they would have completed some passes and things like that. As long as Ben is good to go, and he definitely showed a couple signs of rust last week. I think the growing pains are starting to work their way out. And if they do, I say look out.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same story we have every single year with Ben. This comes back to
every week.
Yeah, exactly. I know Brian and I talked about this in a previous podcast about the benefit of playing your starters during the preseason, at least somewhat, for a quarter here and there, or a half even. I think that's kind of what we've seen with Ben, because every year, it comes about somewhere in the second quarter of the season, things start clicking for him. And I think whenever he doesn't have to rely solely on him, that's where you're going to see the best success. So like last week with the Falcons, the Steelers started forcing the run, and they had success with it. The people that are sitting there starting to question James Conner's ability as a runner, as a receiver. Point blank, you can't have a run game if you don't try to establish it. And you can't establish a run game middle of the game. That's something you have to really kind of dictate coming out of the gates and kind of get the feel for what the defense is throwing at you. And luckily, the Steelers had a good opportunity against the Falcons' completely ravaged and depleted defense to get that going. And I think that's kind of the confidence boost they needed to say, hey, we have a full offensive line full of former Pro Bowlers and all pros. We have a guy like James Conner who's a between-the-tackles guy, can go outside, has a little more pep in his step than he has had in recent years when he had at Pitt. I think realistically, you give him the ball early and often, get the ground game started. That opens up things for Ben. That's pressure off of Ben's shoulder to be able to go and start doing things. I think realistically, they rise and fall with Ben. But when you have a guy like Conner that can at least get some yards on the ground and establish that run game, that's so much easier for Ben to have to go and not have to worry about every single thing. We've seen when Ben's off, the team's off. And they can't stop the run because they know Ben's off. They start running and they're going to stop that too. That's just the reality of Steelers football in 2018. But having that run game established and trying to pound it early, and then you can open up all the world of opportunities with AB, with Juju, with Vance McDonald, with Jesse James, whomever. There's opportunities everywhere for everyone to get involved in the game. and allow Ben to just have fun and sling the ball out there. And I think, this week is another opportunity for the Steelers to kind of get that going and, take advantage of the Bengals defense, who even though on paper they've been good, statistically they haven't been that great in stopping passing yards, stopping the run. So I think if the Steelers can get that started early and really just pound the rock and force it even sometimes to get something established, that's what it's going to take to open up this offense.
I could see the way I envision this is, and last week I was pounding the drum for 25 touches for Connor. 20 plus is going to be good enough here. The Bengals surprisingly have only given up 4 rushing touchdowns all season. That's kind of crazy in 5 games, but if you heard me about how many points, they've only given up 3 less points than the Steelers, so a lot of that's coming through the air too. The play action deal's got to come into play one more time here, and you got to do that by establishing the run with Connor. And I think Connor gets I don't think he'll have 100 rushing. My prediction is he will have 100 all-purpose yards. They're going to get him involved in the passing game, and I think he gets multiple touchdowns because you're going to get down by the goal line. I think he pushes 1 in. He may not push 2 in on the ground, but he might get 1 receiving because Ben's going to look at Antonio Brown. He's going to think about what he just did last week where he tried to force one. We said he had to be Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy to get the ball because there are just so many people around him. But I like James Conner there. I think 2 Steelers get 100 yards receiving in this game. I think there might be one of those big plays, like one of those down the sideline, Martavis Bryant type deals or something like that. I think the Steelers are going to put up enough points on the offensive side of the ball. As long as they keep Ben kind of clean. I mean, we haven't mentioned the elephant in the room. They have a plethora of linebackers, such as Nick Visual, such as, I don't want to say his name. It's almost like he who shall not be named once again. We got a lot of those. I could say Hardy Nickerson Jr. has got some playing time. Preston Brown, who come over from Buffalo. And yes, Vincent Ray. See? They still got more. Vontaze Burfict is the guy that we're always worried and talking about. I don't think Juju knocked any sense into him. He was still suspended to begin the year, so that means his body's pretty fresh. As long as he's back in football shape, he could be that force you don't want to see on the other side of the ball. Who was it? Was it Marquise Pouncey that said that he enjoys seeing him or playing against him because it's a challenge and he might get a little overboard with talking smack? I think that was a professional way of saying I hate his guts. I mean, personally, this is the type of guy. I mean, this isn't like Ben's waiting outside his locker room and trades a jersey with Terrell Suggs like that happened a couple of weeks ago, which was kind of cool. And I think Ben wrote something like real long, like on the numbers on his jersey. He said something like to the GOAT or to the future Hall of Famer or something, and he signed his name and gave his jersey to Suggs, which was kind of cool. I don't know that they had this same level of respect with Burfict because he's gone out there and headhunted guys. So, I mean, that's kind of you talk about a Z factor. That's kind of an X factor on the other side of the ball there. It's still strange seeing Randy Bullock as the place kicker after he left the Steelers, being there, and he's still knuckleballing some of these through. Maybe not quite the same way the kid from the Cleveland Browns did in OT against the Ravens, but yeah, I mean, there's a number of things going on here, and I mean the Bengals definitely had the depth too. I mean, I mentioned Carlos Dunlap as one of the defensive ends. We didn't even talk about Jordan Willis, Michael Johnson, Sam Hubbard, Carl Lawson. Depending on if these guys are healthy, you got Andrew Billings and Geno Atkins. Adolphus Washington. They've got plenty of guys, and there's still Darquez Dennard as one of their nickelbacks, and that's the guy I can never think of his name that everybody wanted the Steelers to take, the player from Michigan State. So I take a look, though, at the Bengals' defense, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, I think the Steelers can get this done. It's not like, they have any major injuries. They've got a couple of games now where everyone's been healthy. You even have, like, rookies or guys that were, Ryan Switzer added late after camp. You got James Washington. These guys have had meaningful playing time. They've had experience now. The jitters are gone. I think they all get on the same page, and I think they get it done Sunday. I don't ever like guessing scores, but, we kind of joked with the Falcons when it was like the first to 40 would probably win. I don't think the Bengals can get to 40. If they get to 30, I think even given their average, maybe a little impressive because if you've got the Steelers holding it down for field goal range, and as long as the offense is getting their job done and having some meaningful possessions, some time of possession, this should pretty much go their way with one other exception, but I'll let you opine on that before I bring that the exception up because you already know it's that third team on the field, and I don't like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I realistically, I'm the bad guy this week with Steel City Underground because
yes, you are. Shame on you. This is Zach's last episode. Everyone, wish him goodbye.
Yeah, having done the trifecta of anti-Steeler teams, picking the Patriots, Ravens, and Bengals to win this week, I'll proceed to pack my car up tonight and drive out of the city.
Shame.
There's a method to my madness, and I will justify that next week, depending on what the results of this game are. So we'll just wait and see. But anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers pull this one out. I picked the Bengals solely because of the fact that while I don't think their record is indicative of the type of team that they are, I ultimately don't think they win the AFC North. I think the Steelers or Ravens do make up some ground here in the coming weeks. I still think the Bengals have shown enough consistency on offense and have that kind of spunk that we haven't seen from past years. Like there's been games where they've gone and kind of just rolled over, and that's been the end of it. But like last week, they were down 17-0, and they came clawing back, albeit against Miami, to close a game out. They've done that in the past. They've been able to close out some quick games, some close games, and I think that's going to be kind of the case this year, especially until I start seeing some consistency from Boswell. I'm going to continue to be nervous. Like the last week, every time he went up for a kick, even though the Steelers were, my heart was stopping, and I was sitting there holding my breath, waiting to see if it was going to go through or not. I have faith he turns it around, but until he does, I think I have every reason to be skeptical. Because of that, I wouldn't be surprised if he misses one or two kicks that end up being crucial. Randy Bullock knuckleballs him through and ends up winning the game for the Bengals. It would be a close score. I don't think the Bengals run away with it. I don't think the Steelers run away with it. I think this is one of those classic Steelers-Ravens games where it's within one score and the team who wins claws away at the very last second on some fluke play. That'd be my prediction for the ultimate outcome. But again, if the Steelers win, which I am obviously hoping that they do, contrary to some people's beliefs,
your own.
Yeah, my own. I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers won. I think they have a good opportunity here to kind of keep that trend going because these are going to be some important weeks moving forward. You got the Bengals, you got to bye to rest up, and you got the Ravens and Browns. That's a good opportunity to kind of really make up some major crucial ground in the AFC North, and you can ultimately come out of that 5-2-1. It's a brand new season at that point in time, and more than likely you're sitting in first place in the AFC North.
5-1-1 or 5 or. Wait a minute. There's only 6 division. Oh, you're talking about overall record. I'm thinking division. Yeah, I'm thinking division because to myself, I'm thinking, oh wait, there's some division games. This is the 3rd division game. I mean, they have 5 of them, and then it's pretty much over until the Bengals come in week 17.
Yeah, 3-1-1 is a great record to be at. We're considering where they started at in the AFC North.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I joke about the shame, but last week I pegged a game that I thought the Steelers-Falcons game was going to remind me of. I said it was like the Colts coming in because you thought the Steelers were going to get whooped. And this game, when you're talking about shootouts, it could very easily be something like the Steelers and Cowboys from a couple of years ago where it was like, I don't even know, like 7 lead changes or something like that. You could see something like that, or you could see something like when the Steelers came back a week later after whooping on the Colts and just made the Ravens look silly as well and just pounded and played 50 on them. Those are 2 scenarios that I definitely see. I don't like the Cowboys scenario only because they lost that one. Here's do I get a K factor maybe or something like that? Yeah, my heart sank. I swallowed deeply with my throat when I saw the referee crew that was assigned for Sunday's game. It is Clete Blakeman, who, if you've watched any of his games or seen anything, I think he had the Rams and Seahawks a week ago, and then I'm trying to think of the other game he just had. He had another primetime game, and it's just like there's always a situation with this guy and his crew where there's like a 5-minute break in the middle of the game trying to remove someone's head from their posterior because it's like they don't know what's going on in the game. And the last four of the last 5 games, now actually the last game that Clete Blakeman officiated that was a Steelers game was against the Colts. last year, which was after the bye. That was the Ben Lipping whatever to Todd Haley game, I believe, and it didn't necessarily go all that smooth from the get-go. So that was a 20-17 win for the Steelers. The previous 4, they all lost. 2 of those were games against the Baltimore Ravens. Guess which other one, ironically, is part of that? The Cowboys game that I just mentioned, that was at Heinz Field, 35-30, and then the overtime game where they lost to the Chicago Bears in Week 3 back in 2017, just a little over a year removed, where you had that goofy blocked punt and the thing with Vance McDonald and the strip, and they screwed up the rule, even though it took them a half hour to try and figure out what was going on. I have no confidence. Brian would be even more harsh than probably what you will, and I'm, of course, you're supposed to be in a brotherhood of referees, not criticized, but like I've said a million times, I'm in a different sport. I understand, I sympathize, it's a thankless job, but not for NFL referees that are making oodles of money doing this, and this is your gig, man. I mean, you gotta hold this like Juju Smith-Schuster holds a football, like a baby, and you got to make sure that you're at top of your game. And I worry, and being on the road and seeing what's happened in these other AFC North rivalry games where Blakeman had just had, like, the one was the wild card game with Ben Tate and all that jazz at Heinz Field back in January of 2015, and that was just a disaster of bad penalties and things of that nature. It's not even so much that they throw the flag, it's just that it seems like they're inconsistent and throw the flag against anything. And I'm already complaining about officiating before the game's even played. I just hope that officiating doesn't get in the way, because this is the type of game where the intensity can raise. Stuff's going to happen. There is bad blood between these teams, and I just don't know that this is the right crew to put the lid on it immediately, stamp it out. We're not going to have this, end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter, and then you have smooth sailing. I think this is one of these games that could get out of control again. It's ugly in the third, and it's a slugfest in the fourth, and there's just all kinds of craziness going on. So I pray to the football gods that is not what's going to happen, but I forewarn everyone. I was pretty much right last week that officiating wasn't going to get in the way. I kind of have a feel for which crews do what. Even when Pete Morelli looks like he's kind of lost out there like Mr. Magoo, you could understand that things are going to happen. But this is one of those crews that I give Ed Hockley credit, but now he's retired and not doing anything anymore. He's got one of his kids somewhere in the ranks, but
his inadequate biceps for his son.
Yeah, I know. He's got to get that guy to. He's got to work on his. He's got to work on the triceps and do it 1, 2. That's my terrible Arnold Schwarzenegger workout video thing. Oh, if you ever listen to that, that's a nightmare. That's a train wreck from the 80s. Like a workout audio tape. Listen to it. It's set to like bad 80s music, actual hits from the 80s. But I digress. I'm going off the rails here because the officiating just has me that worried. At least, like I said, when Ed Hockley, he'd at least draw the line, and you kind of. You could almost at least rationalize with what he was doing out there, even if you didn't agree with it. And I know that you want to talk about the shame. I was just yelling at you. People are throwing like vegetables at me virtually on the stage. Get off the stage, Joe. What are you talking about? But there are certain referees, like I know what to expect. And this is one of the referees that I say expect the unexpected.
Yeah, and I think that kind of really goes in line with what we've seen and come to expect from the Steelers matchups. That there's always, like I said earlier in the podcast, there's always something that seems to happen in these games, whether it's bogus calls, big moments, big plays, big injuries. I think realistically this is going to be another case, and because of that ref crew, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if it came down to that. And that's why I've always been a firm believer that don't let the refs decide the game for you. Play clean, smart football. Put yourself in a position where if they do make a bad call, it's not going to kill you in the final results. Hopefully the Steelers can kind of do what they did last week and get off to that quick start, so that way they can kind of control the pace of the game. And that way, if these flags do start flying for whatever godforsaken reason, they have the opportunity to close out the game in the way that they want to, and not let it come down to some bogus bad call, some bogus no call, whatever you want to choose to put in there. So I think realistically, as long as they can do that, it shouldn't make a difference. And unfortunately, this is not the game. I think that's going to be the case. Like I said, I think it's going to be a closer game, like it was with those Ravens games he did, like it was with the Cowboys games he did. I think realistically that's kind of where we are, and it's going to end up being one of those situations that you're going to see a bad call potentially either make the Steelers fans turn the other cheek and, say, well, I'm glad I'm cheering for this team, or have it where Twitter pretty much explodes due to some bad call and, Mike Tomlin gets fined another $25,000. So
it's almost his penance, like they assigned Cleat to this game as penance, like for Mike Tomlin. Well, you get him. At least we're getting these guys out of the way. Morelli's out of the way. Corrente's out of the way. Blakeman, unfortunately, that probably means we're going to get one of those three again toward the end of the season. But
yeah.
Did you see this with the receivers? This was one I forgot. I had this on the bullets. The leading receivers from each team aren't Antonio Brown and A.J. Green either. It's Juju Smith-Schuster and Tyler Boyd. Who would have ever thought that going into the game? So, Zach, any final thoughts, my friend?
No, just, I hope Steeler Nation can forgive me for my sinful picking against them again for a third week. And I picked against them now 3 weeks in 6 games this year. So, sorry to everybody. I apologize for them at home that they had to put up with a false prophet's son, I guess.
You are just trying to gain an edge by being contrarian in the weekly pick'em, and I'm
trying to call myself out of a hole right now. All right, I'm so far down the rankings. I've never been good at these pick'ems, so I'm just trying my best here.
I think we're all practically at 500, except for Mike Pelaya, who somehow has got the rabbit out of the hat and pulling.
He did that last year too. Yeah. I think he has insider information.
He has a Ouija board. That's what it is. So, well, folks, certainly an interesting game coming up Sunday at 1 o'clock. Make sure you check the local TV listings. I know I won't have to contend with the Cleveland Browns got bumped for the Steelers in my local area, which is awesome. I don't have to worry about that. Not that I would anyways, because I am totally equipped. But we have some other exciting news. Hopefully not only a Steelers victory when we come back around with the post-game wrap-up, either later on Sunday or early Monday morning, but there'll be some other surprise trick-or-treat items on the docket for the bye week that's going to come up after this. So Steelers 2-2-1 at Cincinnati, who's 4-1. Don't miss it. So I want to just say one more time, Professor, the nickname's going to stick to you whether you like it or not. Zach, thanks for joining me again.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever we get the Professor on, we could probably go close to an hour. It's even more than myself or Brian can speak. So until next time, my name is Joe Kuzma. His name's Zach Meckler. Be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.